There is something you already know. You've been avoiding it for years. Jung had a name for what happens when the ego finally loses control. He called it the compensatory unconscious. The psyche speaking precisely because you won't. Not only in dreams, in visions, in memories, in the stories we tell our children, in the methods we use to hunt others. These 7 films show what that looks like. Let's begin. Wild Strawberries, 1957, Ingmar Bergman. Isak Borg is driving to receive his honorary doctorate, the greatest day of his professional life. And before Bergman lets him get there, he shows us a dream. Empty streets, clocks with no hands, a driverless hearse, and when Isak approaches the fallen coffin, the corpse grabs him. He finds himself staring at his own dead face. This is Jung's compensatory dream in its purest form. For 78 years, Isak has framed his emotional coldness as discipline, his distance from people as a kind of integrity. The ego is comfortable with this story. The dream is not. It tells him what he has refused to know. You are already dead. The ceremony means nothing. The accolades mean nothing. You stopped living long before your body agreed to follow. Isak has spent a lifetime perfecting a single defense, not feeling. It worked. It kept everything out, and that is exactly what made him vulnerable to what the dream does, because the tighter the ego holds, the more precisely the unconscious aims at what it's protecting. Bergman places this dream at the very beginning, because everything Isak encounters that day flows from the wound it opens. Memories return, regrets speak. He watches his own life indict him. By the end, Isak receives his honorary degree. The ceremony happens. But that was never what the film was about. It was about what the dream said at dawn. And the film ends not with triumph, but with a second dream. His parents, young again, across the water, waving. The ego finally quiet enough to receive what it spent a lifetime refusing. The compensation, at last, complete.
Io non capisco. Incontro una ragazza che lo può far rinascere, che gli ridà vita, e lui la rifiuta.
Perché non ci crede più?
Perché non sa voler bene.
8½, 1963, Federico Fellini. Guido is making a film. At least that's what everyone around him believes. The producers are waiting. The cast is assembled. The set is being built. And Guido has nothing. No story, no vision, no idea what he's trying to say. But he can't admit this. Not to them, not to himself. So he keeps moving, keeps performing the role of the director who knows exactly what he's doing. Fellini opens the film with a dream. In the tunnel sequence, Guido is trapped. No exit, no movement. The ego that spent every waking hour projecting confidence and control is shown, in sleep, exactly what it is. Immobile, suffocating, going nowhere. Jung argued that the creative act cannot be forced by the ego. It emerges from somewhere the ego doesn't control. Guido's block isn't artistic, it's psychological. He has lost contact with the source. Fellini builds the entire film around this gap, between what Guido performs and what his psyche knows, the women he can't be honest with, the memories he keeps returning to, the memory of Saragina, the woman from childhood who was supposed to be shameful, who never was, returning not as guilt, but as truth. Each unconscious intrusion tightens the same screw. You are not who you are pretending to be. By the end, Guido stops pretending, not with triumph, with surrender. The film he couldn't make becomes the film Fellini made instead. And the final image is not resolution. It's what the unconscious was trying to show him all along.
If you want to tell me anything, just write it on this pad.
No.
Am I alive? Yes, you are alive.
No, this is gonna hurt a little.
All That Jazz, 1979, Bob Fosse. Every morning, Joe Gideon stands in front of a mirror. Eye drops, amphetamines, a cigarette. Then he looks at his own reflection and says, "It's showtime." This is a man who has built an entire identity around not stopping. More shows, more women, more work. The body is failing. He knows this. The doctors have told him. But the ego has a different agenda. The ego has always had a different agenda. Then Angelique appears. She is death. She is also the only character in the film Joe cannot perform for. Every other relationship in his life runs on charm, deflection, spectacle. With Angelique, none of it works. She simply waits. She already knows the ending. This is what Jung meant by the compensatory dream. Not a random image, but a precise correction. Joe's waking life is built entirely on the illusion of invincibility. So the unconscious produces its exact opposite, a figure who sits across from him and tells him calmly what he refuses to hear during the day. Joe is warned, clearly, directly, repeatedly. By his body, by his doctors, by a figure his own unconscious produces. He keeps choosing the mirror instead. Bob Fosse knew what he was making. The film is his own compensatory dream, produced before his body forced the same conversation. He died of a heart attack 8 years after release. The mirror was always lying. Angelique never was. Hiroshima Mon Amour, 1959, Alain Resnais. She has come to Hiroshima to make a film about peace. She will leave in the morning. She has no intention of telling anyone anything. Then she watches a Japanese man's hand twitch in sleep, and something begins to move. Elle has spent 14 years constructing a single sentence. I have forgotten. Nevers, the German soldier, the cellar, the humiliation. All of it buried under a life that continued, as lives do, regardless. The ego's work is never finished, and rarely more complete than when it has convinced itself there is nothing left to hide. Resnais films the collapse not as breakdown, but as seepage. At a cafe table, Elle begins to speak, quietly at first. Then the images come, not as flashback, but as intrusion. The twitching hand of a dead man, the cellar floor, her own hair being shorn. The past doesn't return in Hiroshima Mon Amour. It was never gone. It was simply waiting for a face that resembled the right one. Jung called it the one-sided conscious attitude, the ego's insistence that it has already done the work. 14 years of silence is not mourning. It is postponement. And the unconscious, when it finally speaks, speaks with everything that was owed. By the end of the night, they have no personal names left, only the weight of their geography. She looks at him and says, Hiroshima, that is your name. And he replies, and your name is Nevers. 2 cities, 2 wounds, 1 psyche that never completed its own mourning.
Io non posso decidere, perché non sono una donna sola, per quanto a volte è come separata. No, non da mio marito, no. I corpi sono separati.
Red Desert, 1964. Michelangelo Antonioni. Juliana doesn't look sick. She looks like someone who has been told repeatedly that the problem is hers. She moves through the industrial landscape of Ravenna, the fumes, the gray water, the factory sounds, and her body registers what everyone around her refuses to acknowledge. Her husband manages the plant. Her friends find the landscape beautiful. The world has adapted. Juliana has not. The ego's position is clear. Something is wrong with her. The diagnosis, the hospitalization, the breakdown, all of it points inward. She is the variable. The environment is fixed. Then one evening, she tells her son a story. A girl alone on an island, crystal clear water and pink sand, a sailing ship with no one aboard that disappears on the horizon, and then a voice coming from the rocks, the sea, the island itself, everything whispering. This is what Jung meant by the compensatory unconscious, not a dream, not a hallucination, a story the psyche produces because the conscious mind has no other way to say, "This is what I need and cannot have." The ego has accepted the industrial world as reality. The unconscious refuses. Antonioni shoots the fantasy in warm pink and gold, the only sustained color in a film drained of everything else. The contrast is not subtle. It is the unconscious speaking in the only register the ego cannot argue with: beauty. Juliana is not ill. She is the only character in the film whose psyche is still telling the truth. The Element of Crime, 1984, Lars von Trier. Fischer is not in Europe. He is in Cairo, lying in a chair being hypnotized. Everything we are about to see, the rain-soaked streets, the yellow darkness, the serial killer, the method, is happening inside his unconscious. Von Trier makes this clear from the first frame. The question is not what happened in Europe. The question is what Fischer's psyche does with what happened. The case involves a series of murders, young girls. Fischer's mentor, Osborne, has a theory. To catch a killer, you must become him. Follow his route, think his thoughts, live inside his logic until the boundary between hunter and hunted dissolves. The ego's position is professional. Fischer is the detective. The killer is the subject. The method is a tool. The unconscious has a different account. As Fischer follows Harry Gray's trail, his movements, his patterns, his crimes, something begins to shift. The film's sepia darkness makes everyone look the same. The rain erases distinctions, and slowly, without announcement, Fischer stops following Gray. He starts becoming him. Jung argued that what we pursue most relentlessly in others is what we most refuse to find in ourselves. The shadow doesn't disappear because we give it a professional name. It waits inside the method. By the end, Fischer has done what he was hunting, and he cannot wake up. Von Trier shoots it all in sulphurous yellow, the color of something decaying from the inside.
Courage is the solution to despair. Reason provides no answers. We can't know what the future will bring. We have to choose despite uncertainty.
First Reformed, 2017, Paul Schrader. Thaler keeps a journal. He writes with discipline and precision, the diary of a man who has decided that the self is the problem. His son died in a war Thaler encouraged him to fight. He drinks alone. He is, by his own account, nothing. A vessel, a caretaker of a church that almost no one attends. The ego's position is theological. I have surrendered. There is no more I. Then a young woman arrives. Her husband is consumed by environmental despair. She asks Thaler to help. And something begins to move that he cannot locate and cannot stop. One evening, they lie side by side on the floor, breathing in sync. And then they rise. The floor disappears. They move through landscapes, mountains, ocean, open sky. It is what the unconscious produces when the ego has suppressed everything long enough. The body's truth, returned in the only form the defended mind cannot argue with. But when Thaler turns away from her, he sees something else. A ruined earth, choked by plastic, scarred by industrial smog, stripped. The same unconscious that gave him the levitation gives him this, because they are the same thing, desire and destruction, what he refused to feel and what he refused to stop. Jung wrote that the compensatory unconscious becomes more extreme the more one-sided the conscious attitude. Thaler has spent years perfecting his one-sidedness. The unconscious responds with the full weight of everything he has been carrying. 7 films, 7 moments the ego lost control. Jung said the unconscious doesn't wait for permission. It's already been speaking. These films just made it impossible to look away. Thank you for watching.